Hey Gus, what's up?
Hey Antonio, I'm great. How you doing?
Good, good. We're officially live on our first podcast.
Yes, we are.
So for everybody listening and watching, my name's Antonio Sosa. Right now I'm currently living in Austin, Texas. The one and the only Fergus McClure, otherwise known as Theo Surgriff.
Or Guss, great to be here.
Cool, cool, man. And the cool thing about Gus, everybody, is he's from New Zealand. So I'm gonna be uploading this on Anchor, and it's gonna go out to a lot of American channels. But what's native out there?
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of distinguishable birds like the kakapo, the kiwi, which we're known for around the world. We're also known for the hangi, an amazing Māori food that they cook under the ground.
Wow.
And then we're known for the All Blacks as well. So there are a few of the things that we're known by in New Zealand.
If you haven't seen it, but look up the haka dance. They're the beast looking men that just do the craziest ceremony before playing rugby, right?
That's
If
the one.
for any
That's the
guy,
one.
it just totally just pumps you up. And didn't you say you did that one time, or you've done it?
Yeah, yeah. I played rugby at school, and one of the things that we learnt was doing a haka for our school before we'd go into battle, go into a game. We'd actually perform a haka. So a lot of kids growing up in New Zealand learn that kind of thing.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, obviously, America and Texas is totally different, and it's all about American football, and especially Texas is really all about football. They made a whole movie about it, Friday Night Lights. But I know our podcast is mainly out of your brainchild creation of Ignite, create, educate, and inspire. For all the listeners, what is Ignite all about?
Well, Ignite is really about creating an environment for people to excel, that's mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. Um, that's educating people with life transforming insights, because we all know that the truth can illuminate in a dark place, when you're feeling in the darkness. And then also, it's all about inspiring people to find and follow their particular passion or mission in life. And when I believe you get those three together, you hit something called the sweet spot, which we're very excited about in Ignite. But that, in essence, is the nutshell of what Ignite's all about.
Amazing. And you know, me and Gus originally met in Bali, Indonesia, out of all coolest places. And instantly we just hit it off and we connected. And you became our life coach. And what were, there's six or seven major areas of life that Ignite focuses on teaching on, right?
Yeah, so there seems to be an expanding list, but yeah, for the
Right.
beginners, it's a core, the core areas of life. So we really look at mastering, financially, um, the mind, the mental game, your emotional life, time management, your career, and then we look on things like the subconscious as well, the subconscious realm. So there are a few of them, but literally how we sort of organize it with each individual is we show them the major categories of life that really makes life in harmony once they get these areas together. But we let them prioritize what they want to do, so they can feel increasingly in control of what's most important to them. Ignite's never about telling people what to do or how to order their life. It's about providing people with an environment that's proven to help them excel, and then let them be the ones in the control seat choosing where they want to direct their life, and then we enable them.
Yep. Because all of life is you're told what to do. You never really have it laid out how to think and how to choose and how to design your life. And that's what you've been able to help us do tremendously. And I know we wanted to focus, particularly do a series on finances, and what a topic it is, especially with all this uncertainty and unpredictability and with COVID.
Yeah.
What has this year done for you financially? What has it taught you or
This year so far taught me financially, well, because I've tried to collect all the best nuggets I've known along my life and apply them to my life and then design a course on it. But what it's reinforced me more than anything this year is the ability to be independent, the ability to need to be self-sufficient, and to really own your life, own your finances. And for me, that entails so many things. But a couple of key things is I love the session in the course where it talks about knowing how to live off the grid, knowing how to actually. So I'm designing a plan that I've got 3 to 6 months worth of food that is non-perishable for life. I'm now getting a new bunch. I want to be set up for a year. So, what's reinforced to me this year is the need, the idea of smart homes, the idea of increasingly having the ability to what I call the FU factor, the ability to negotiate with anyone, any boss, because you have the self-sufficiency with you. But particularly in COVID, we're seeing food shortages. We're seeing what used to be given to countries en masse not being able to be given. All those industries are affected. So more and more, if you can have the confidence that you can direct your life, you're not going to be a victim inside what we call the matrix.
I totally agree. And I just thought of this as you were saying it. COVID didn't cause anything. It just exposed all of the holes, exposed all of the malpractices and essentially a bubble. It was really just a lot of people live in a bubble. I was included. And COVID, I don't think caused anything. Of course, there's its ramifications, but it's totally showing how we need to re-examine how we've been living for the masses, for the majority. When I say that, what comes to mind? What are some of the things that you've been seeing, or where shall we pick and dive deep into first?
Well, just on what you're saying initially about getting caught exposed, well, what happens is, and that's why the first session of the financial course is really about having a global vision and having a knowledge of the history of the world's economic system. Because what happens is when we just come out, and we're not blaming anyone for holding this because it's the most natural thing to hold, and I held it for many years, because money is often scarce when people grow up. And what we do is we tend to idolize and prioritize the pursuit of money, but we don't really understand how money's produced and where it comes from. And so the first session that we do in the course is really enabling people to see it from a global, holistic perspective. So they're not caught up in the victim mindset of depending on an employer, or depending on some lucky way to win lotto, or depending on some chance they think money's going to change their life. Yeah, it may upgrade your lifestyle for a moment, but what are you going to go back to with your default setting if you don't understand how money works? And so a big thing that I think is a great place to start is understanding how the economy works, why it works, and why we actually need to create value and not just to depend on the dollar to try and be self-sufficient.
Creating value and not depending on the dollar, not depending on your politicians, your parents, not depending on really anybody. And I love how Jim Rohn talked about value. There's people who make a few dollars a day, and there's people who make millions of dollars a day. The only difference is not the time, but the value that goes in the time. Everybody has 24 hours a day. Billionaires and millionaires have the same 24 hours we do. It's just the total value. And a cheesy saying that people have probably heard is, if you take all the money from the rich and the wealthy, you give it to the poor, the rich and wealthy will get it back in 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, 100%. I've heard that, you give everyone $1 million today, and by the end of the month, you'll have half the population with 2 million, the other half with 0. And then you give it another 6 months, and then you'll have the top 20%, with pretty much 80 million, and the bottom 80% with the rest. And then you just give it even a longer timeline, and you end up seeing more and more wealth being in the hands of the higher and higher up it goes, And so that's the kind of reality of it.
I didn't hear about that one. I like that one a lot. It kind of makes me feel a little eerie, because it sounds like we've kind of been decades in the making of the wealth gap. And what do you think? What's your crystal ball see in this wealth gap going on, especially in America and the third world?
Well, that's what we're seeing currently, particularly over the last 50 years. We've seen an exponential curve of, now we've got individuals that own more GDP than certain countries in the world. They have access to more wealth than entire countries. And so you've got the power shifting more and more to multinational companies. You've got the power shifting to the few, and the masses become victims of what they want to do. So less and less about the governments making decisions, and more and more about them trying to work with those with all the power. So to answer that question, it would depend on whether I'm going to put my conspiracy hat on, or whether I'm going to put the general hat on. But regardless, if we were just not even look down the conspiracy rabbit hole, and we were simply just to say what's likely going to happen, well, let's just see what's happening with COVID. What are the policies? What are the government asking people to do? They're asking small businesses to stop, medium businesses shut down, And increasingly, what's left? What's left are the big multinational companies that are going to get all the profits that these small and medium businesses who they were competing with in the past, they're suddenly going to siphon off the top. So now you're only going to have a few, instead of maybe 20 brands to buy, you might only have 5 to choose from. And now they're going to regulate everything. And so pretty much the consequences are we're going to have fewer options to choose from. We're going to be more dictated to of how we buy and order things. And what are the implications of that? Well, again, it's going to increase the power of the few and decrease the options of those, because as we know from Jim Rohn, unless you create value, you have less options, because true wealth's created from adding value. And if you increasingly become a victim and offer nothing to the world, well, guess what? You're going to become more and more a dependent child.
Exactly. Man, and what's sinister is the illusion of these options. A lot of times we don't know some of these multinational corporations rebrand and relabel or acquire by the little guys and repackage. So you think you're getting variety, but it's still, just look at the meat production in the US, 70-80% are from one or two companies, and in the entire country. And Monsanto is one of these big corporations that people started catching on, and they sold off to jump out of the radar to, I think it's called Bayern or Biram or something like that. The largest food producing company in the US, Monsanto, sold off to the largest pharmaceutical company, an international one. So it's a really interesting thing if you start paying attention to where the money is going. In fact, that's all you have to really do. Recently saw something about how even fact-checking websites, if you follow their funding, you can't really trust the internet. And this is why people like podcasts. They can tell the truth when someone's speaking, and they can start seeing lies as they become educated, essentially as they become enlightened. And that's part of the mission of Ignite, right?
Oh, well, 100%. It's, to me, I love what Jim Rohn said, as you invest, the greatest thing you can improve on is not the product, it's yourself. And as you upgrade yourself, you upgrade your ability to generate wealth. So products improve as you improve, but if you put your focus on the product primarily and you don't improve your ability to create, then you're limiting yourself. And you're exactly right. So now more than ever are those principles relevant. It's about personal industry. It's about using this time. And I see so many people become a victim when the COVID issue came out and people were just hunkering down, and they were just neglecting the things they could do to grow. They were neglecting their ability to contribute, and they were sleeping more. And I saw this literally before my eyes. People were taking more indulgences, which I can understand for a time. And the problem is, if you do what the majority do, you're going to get the result of the majority of the people. And now more than ever are the principles available to how can you now increase your ability to add value? How can you increase your ability to contribute? And how can you increase your ability to generate wealth, regardless of the conditions out there? And so, yeah, you're exactly right. Maybe, is it possible to share my screen?
Yeah, of course.
And then I'll be able to actually show people as we talk some of the key things that I'm really wanting. You asked the question of what to focus on first. Well, I think this is a great aspect to focus on, is that bigger picture. Okay. So getting back to what you were talking about, I think a lot of people just don't understand this basic idea. And I just wanted to, as you asked that question, I just wanted to maybe expand a little bit on that, if that's all right.
Yeah, of course. This is why you're a genius, Guss. Look at this.
Well, we've basically got way back here. If you look, you've got the caveman starting out. And what was valuable in society back then was being an apex predator, was the ability to hunt and, survive. And of course, that was what was valued. But what we didn't see happen through the years was they improved their technology, they improved tools, they made the wheel, and then we saw a massive change in the agricultural revolution. And so we can see on this page, we really went from a hunting-gathering society to growing and harvesting. And only once we could settle down and actually grow and harvest our crops could we then specialize. We couldn't specialize before that as a society because we were so focused in fight-flight mode. We were so focused in gathering enough calories for the day. And, usually would take probably expend 2,000 calories to create 2,000 calories. And it wasn't until we knew how to grow and harvest that we could create an abundance of calories, which meant that was a key currency at the time. It wasn't money, it was calories. Because otherwise, if you didn't have enough, there's no way you could focus on other stuff if you didn't feed your belly for that day. And so once people could feed their belly, they then could specialize, and then they could offer other services. And after the bartering, after we went through that bartering phase, we then saw the importance of the money exchange system. And why was that important? That was important because money was never an issue, never a factor until we created a surplus. And once we created a surplus, we needed something that we could transact with to represent the value of what we held. But this is what most people, a lot of people don't understand. They just focus on money as the answer. Money's not the answer. It was created to symbolize the value of what you've created. So unless you continually create value, you're not doing anything else for the economy. Printing more money is not going to help the economy just to give people an idea. It's only ever a band-aid, because eventually we just create more money in circulation, which devalues the value of a dollar.
So when you're overextended, essentially, and not all debt is bad. There's good debt and bad debt, but when you're essentially fueled by greed and you go well beyond your means, essentially artificial, you're borrowing on your promise, essentially you're borrowing on your equities, that's a bubble, and it does pop. And I totally agree with you. It's essentially the country just borrowing from itself and adding more debt to every citizen. I think there's a national debt clock, and I think we're at 20 something trillion for the US. And how's New Zealand with their debt? And
we're not too bad currently. I think we're about 30% of our GDP, which is an acceptable number considering a crisis. But I think we're relatively well off in the global scheme of things. But still, I don't think there's many countries that are scot-free in terms of debt. There's certain dependent countries, but overall, people are in that sort of scenario.
Yeah.
And then as you can see, what really changed society, we went through the age of exploration, which then we expanded in the 1500s right around the world. And then what really changed things to a whole nother level was the agricultural revolution. Why that markedly changed it, we went from pretty much 80 to 90% of the population working in the fields in, say, like the 1600s in the feudal era. And then amazingly, in a number of, it was such a short period of probably like 100 years, we went from that number down to like 25% of the population working in the food industry. And you can imagine now, if you've got that dramatic change, there's now a huge surplus of people that are able to do other things. Otherwise, they're going to be disenfranchised. Hence the Industrial Revolution. So with all this excess capital, human capital, they created things, machines, which led way to what we recognize as now the electrical revolution. And now we're sitting in the digital revolution. And here's what you're saying about where we're going to. Well, now we're in this crazy situation where we're in this amazing age called the digital revolution. We're halfway stepping into the Internet of Things, where everything's going to be picking up information artificially. And then in a few years, we're going to see the rise of artificial intelligence, not on a small level, but on a global level. And then from there, we're going to see something that's never been seen before on a mass scale, which is man potentially will merge with machine, that's where, we're going to see more and more, potentially people are going to become hybrids. And I'm saying just based on the current trajectory, I'm not fortune telling here. I'm just saying based on where we've been going and what's likely to come. And then we could even see potentially machine merging with man as they know how to manipulate DNA. Now, I'm not saying I agree with all this or I want all this. I'm just saying this is likely where things are going based on where things have already been heading.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And just to add some practical examples, with artificial intelligence, just the other day, from my 9 to 5, I work at a Ford dealership, and one of these top engineers and mechanics was telling me that many automakers are investing heavily, not on the cars anymore, but on the technology. And the future will be similar to that of Will Smith's movie, I, Robot, where vehicles are driving 24/7, and it'll be much cheaper for you to just use the ride sharing than owning a vehicle. And artificial intelligence will pick you up, drop you off. It's constantly always making money and working for the owners of the vehicle. And it's essentially, it adds a lot of benefits, safeties there too, but it does remove the autonomy of the human being and the dream of ownership there. So
absolutely, like Yeah, you're exactly right. And without going too far into this, because this is, a bit more crystal ball gazing, but it's a real thing to look forward to in the future. It could be a dystopia or a utopia, depending on who rules the world with the wealth, right? But we've got potentially future cities where we haven't begun to explore how we could colonize under the sea or in the air. And then going one step forward, we've got the ability to replicate these types of things and people to live in these virtual worlds. And then we've got nanotechnology, and they're just exploring all the realms of that, which is another whole aspect. So there's potential that we could utilize the lack of ability to have to need, or the lack of need to have to work. We could live these amazing lives, but it's going to be how we perceive our future. And so this is what potentially could be happening in the future. We could create AI, as long as we don't create them too intelligent and they take us over, but they could be pretty much doing all the tasks that currently humans are doing. And then the idea is we could potentially going on to man asteroids, colonize the galaxy. I mean, this sounds science fiction, but people would have been saying that was science fiction to try and visit Mars just a while back, and now with Elon Musk, that's what they're looking at doing. And what you're bringing up is this huge argument here, which is spirit versus machine. Will we lose our identity if we merge with machine, or if we let machine take over? What does that mean for a human if we don't? Will we have a sense of purpose if we don't have a job to do that's needed in society? So a lot of these issues potentially could come out of what we're talking about.
Sometimes people say with every new solution comes two more problems. And I think a big part of Ignite is teaching you how to think, because even though as a society as a whole, we're improving and technology is getting better, and apparently we're getting smarter, doesn't mean you're going to be fitter, healthier, happier. You have to learn how to think and seek out the information, which is what I believe we both do, is seek out information that works for ourselves. Because if it were the case, then why do we have so much obesity in America? Why do we have all-time lows of wages? So
exactly,
we're all getting and improving, but that doesn't mean, even though technology is pushing the envelope, we really need to keep up. We can't just assume it's going to benefit us just because we now have self-driving cars.
100%. And just on touching on what you're saying there, one thing that Ignite believes, that we believe here at Ignite, is that, the spirit versus machine, there is something that a pill never can give you that making decisions for your own life will give you. That learning through your own biofeedback of what you're doing in the world and what response you're giving. And that's what I believe we've got a human spirit for, is the ability to learn from life, to feel a sense of self-pride. If all you had to do was put a pill in your body and you'd magically change into Superman, you've got no sense of growth or ownership. You've just sort of been told to do this and you get this result. But part of the beauty of being an Ignite is actually learning to grow, having that sense. I always say this question to people, and I guess if you never experienced it, you don't know. I had the good fortune of getting to be financially independent by age 30, traveling the world and living a life that I could have only dreamed of years ago, with total freedom, unlimited time, money enough to do what I wanted. But you know what happened to me after 3 months of doing that? Eventually, a form of depression crept in, a form of helplessness, hopelessness, a form of boredom crept in. And then I realized, wow, I've achieved everything I thought I wanted. But then I realized, if I'm not growing anymore, I've lost some joy. If I'm not serving anymore, I've lost some happiness. So some core elements of what I believed in and loved, I didn't have anymore when I thought I had it all. And so what Ignite believes, having been to that top of that mountain of what everyone says is amazing, and you see this with celebrities and movie stars, they get to the top of everything. They own everything, have all the money in the world. What do? They take drugs, they get depressed, and they even commit suicide. Well, I can understand how someone can get to that level when they quote unquote get the world, because in one sense they lose their soul. They stop to grow, they compromise something, they stop being able to serve, they stop being able to have a purpose, they lose something. And what Ignite believes, far beyond than just relinquishing to the authorities and just taking a pill to say you can have this chip in your brain, is to say, look, enjoy the process of growth. It's life, earn the right to enjoy your life, but love the process. And so that's part of the heart of what Ignite's about as well.
Love what you said there. It kind of reminds me of there's a science to achievement and an art to fulfillment. the meaning of life and what Ignite teaches is mastering both. It's totally a journey, not a destination, and that's part of the financial teachings too, because you taught us about, and maybe another podcast or we'll dive deep into these topics, but from low level reptilian survival mode thinking and how it correlates not just to finances but all areas of life too, to the abundance and mindfulness, just high conscious living, which is what all the principles teach you. You just feel more powerful as you apply them, because as we do get a complex world with all this technology, our happiness lies in the simplicity of a smile, a sunset, a rose, and just being in the moment. And that is more than enough to feel the abundance of wealth that's in this world.
Yeah, I love what you're saying there. And this is what I teach a lot of clients early on, is this idea of just earning back the right to actually give yourself the gift of growth and self-discipline. People don't realize there's a beautiful feedback loop that when you are true to yourself, when you honor what you decide you want to do, you actually create a sense of self-integrity, self-worth, and there's a biofeedback which actually reinforces your self-esteem, which tells you you can make decisions, you are in control of your life, and you can create the world of your dreams through your decisions. And when people get a taste of that, they never want to give it up. But most people would rather bury their head in the sand when they're financially in debt. They would rather a magic pill to wave a wand to get away everything. And I understand that, because that's an easy way out. So people get debt upon debt just to get out of the debt, without really pulling their head out of the sand and understanding what's really going on.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that would be a good thing to maybe delve into, is that fight, flight, reptilian brain idea.
Because that is a great place to start, is identifying where the most men are in. Most men are in that situation. I was talking to a buddy of mine who has 2 kids, and he initially got out of the Marine Corps into the workforce, looking at all these jobs that only paid just above the poverty line. And he essentially decided to just go back to school. It's one way to add value to himself, because he felt the pressure to provide for his family. So most men, I would say, feel that pressure to provide.
100%. And that often people get led into very short range decisions that aren't good for their soul long term, or aren't sustainable. And I see a lot of guys, which are understandable, they need to put food on the table, but if they stay in that zone too long, the stress builds up and they have a breakdown long term. So yeah, it's going to be a short term solution, but Ignite's all about securing that reptilian brain first, which we will touch on in a sec. But I just wanted people to understand how it works. And what most people don't realize is, as you can see on that clip there, you can see from breaking even at 0, and then you've got down negative high at begging. And from in the middle, you've got dependence, debt recovery, ignorance, and bankruptcy, and even levels within that. But what people don't realize is that because they don't subconsciously reset their blueprint of their finances, what happens is they often just go from breaking even down to bankruptcy. And, very rarely they go to begging, but overall, you've got people that, they feel really bad now. Their options are drying up. Their credit score is really bad. They can't get any more in higher purchase or on loan. So what do? They go, right, I better make good decisions now. And sure enough, they apply the right principles. They spend within their means. They do it. They sell a few things. They do the right thing, and they get back up to breaking even. But here's what they don't realize. There's the same amount of energy in what they actually do in the world, and applying the same principles to get from breaking even up to development and being financially savvy, than it is from going from financial bankruptcy back up to breaking even. It's the same amount of energy to get up, but it's a different motivation. And because they don't know how to manipulate their motivation in life, they're having to rely on their environment to motivate them, even though they're putting out even more effort now. Once they get in debt, they've got to put more effort to get back to breaking even. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. One thing though, you've said is we're either motivated by pain or pleasure. This fanatical, one of the sales top people here in America, Grant Cardone, says he wants you to get into a lot of debt, a lot of pressure, that you have to work really hard.
Whatever. So who wants you to get into debt?
Grant Cardone said that he wants people to get into debt, high amounts of debt, because he wants people's work ethics to exponentially grow. He's pretty much claiming you either get blown in or blown out. Lukewarm right there in the middle. I know this is not a motivational scale. This is a financial ladder there, but since we were talking about motivations, the dream or the nightmare motivates. And usually I find, you've said this too, usually people who are caught in the middle are not usually the most motivated.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. And you're very right in that when you do allow a pain to kick in, you often do get motivated, but often it comes from a place of stress. So you don't often access your best ideas. You might access better work ethic, but it's not sustainable. You tend to burn the candle at both ends just to get out of that zone. And it's not a sustainable model long term. What I'm advocating for at Ignite is firstly, secure your reptilian brain. And I show people how to do that. Within weeks, you can actually secure the reptilian brain. There's a number of ways to do it. Once you've got that secured, you can then not only have a better work ethic if you choose, but you can think creatively. You're not stuck in fight flight mode, having to live week to week or even day to day for some people, from meal to meal, not knowing how much money they're going to get the next paycheck. And so a lot of this is changing the blueprint, but I'll show you here. I think this is important for viewers to understand, that you've really got these kind of like these 5 brains, these 5 parts of the brain that access these different areas. And in order to complete, and the financial course takes people right through mastery. So in the 9 sessions or the 10 sessions, really, you look at all of these 5 parts of your brain in depth, and you work out how you can actually master each one of them. But the first one's the survivor. So unless people know how they can be secure, they'll often stay in that fight flight. And as you said, people live in Q1, which is a terminology we use for urgent and important, and they don't know how to overcome it. And so they're just relying on the environment to give them the energy and the adrenaline to like kick into life and actually make some money. But like I said, it increases cortisol in the body. We know that from the studies. And we know that cortisol produces stress in the body. And we know that long term, that creates disastrous effects and a shorter lifespan, continually living in stress. So we know that it's very wise, even though it might produce some good surface results. This Cardone guy who's talking about getting people into that fight flight stage, it might produce some good superficial results. It's not necessarily quality for the golden goose of their soul, the human being, long term.
That totally makes sense. That sounds a lot better advice. And I have felt, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people have felt, burnout and coming from the stress zone rather than the inspired zone. And it's night and day difference. And I'm glad I'm not in the stress zone. And it's a game-changing type of piece of advice. So that's an awesome take.
Well, 100%. And so, that brain there, the survivor in you, this is massive. So there's a number of ways that we look at really addressing this, but the first way is just getting awareness of your current financial habits. How you access this is by creating a new vision. But then one way that we really help the survival brain is actually learning how to have your bucket system. We'll even do it, just creating a bucket system will, but we unpack that more of the steward. But another way that really helps is just knowing that you can actually live off the grid if you need to. That, like in my house now, I've got, like I said, I've got 3 to 6 months worth of food supplies that are non-perishable for life. That I've got gas on tap and I've got water on tap that is independent from the system, and food on tap. So worst case scenario, we're set up for 3 to 6 months. Now, what effect does that have on your life? And these are the unintended consequences that I wanted to share with you as well. So, and I've done this with clients, and it's amazing hearing their response. What actually ends up happening is they're not tied to their employer in the same way. Their ability to negotiate. They used to feel like they have to take on more shifts just to please their employer, right? Now they're actually going, no, I'm going to spend this more with my family, because they know they've got the security in the background.
Yeah.
So by just securing that part of the brain first, it has so many flow-on effects.
Yeah, like the ability to own your own land. Once you own your own land, with maybe some good water source, good climate, good environment, you can start building on your land and doing things slowly but surely, planting some of your own herbs, some of your own fruits, maybe a tree or two. I know for sure whenever I do get my land, I want to have a lot of chickens. We eat eggs all the time. And it's better for you. And they're very low maintenance. I think it's going to be really cool. I even want to have some livestock. I want to have some cows. I want to have some goats.
Yeah. Look, 100%. And I realize for a lot of the viewers or people listening to this, that might sound a big stretch. I'll never own land. You don't even have to start there. This is a scale, just to reinforce that idea that Even if you start with, imagine if you're currently living week to week in your life, imagine saving up enough that you don't have to go from week to week. You can go from 2 weeks to 2 weeks. Or to get another level, you can go for a month. You know, you've got a month saving for an emergency. So worst case scenario, you don't have to work for a month and you can live off that. Then you extend that to 6 months, and that's just in a financial term. And then once you get to that level, then you can go, well, actually, I can store at least a month's worth of rice and beans, which doesn't take up that much space in my room. So even if you don't have your own land, you don't have your own house, there's a place you can start. There's always a place you can start. So I love what you're saying about owning your land. And I think it's a great place to aim towards. But I'm saying in the meantime, don't feel like if you don't have access to that in the immediate future that you've got to throw this concept away. You can definitely get secure the reptilian brain in a lot of creative ways a lot faster than what you realize.
Yeah, you're right. And rice and beans is extremely cheap everywhere. How long does it last?
Well, it's infinite basically. So if you got like basmati rice and you got beans, you've pretty much covered all your nutrient bases with those foods, all your micronutrients. And so as long as you've got stored gas and you've got stored water, you can cook that up for as long as you've got those supplies. And it's, as far as I know, it's pretty much ongoing. It's a lifetime shelf life with those things.
Wow. And that removes people's fears of starving to death or wondering what they're going to do, and it's a subconscious life hack. And I love how you say, yeah, it's you can be conscious, and it only takes just little baby steps to start making some progress.
Look, it sounds so simple. Look, I know everyone doesn't necessarily want to live off rice and beans. I'm not saying you have to, but I'm saying if you were choosing between your happiness of your life situation and having to exist on rice and beans for a while, often just knowing you've got that option frees up your space. Just that alone and allows you to negotiate better. Knowing you've got this backup, it's just incredible what it does without even intending to change, be more creative. You are more creative because you're not in fight flight mode.
And that's actually, I want to highlight, it's extremely true, because the fact that we have to advocate for something that simple shows how much the media tries to show the lack or scarcity of these resources, when right now we currently produce 10 times more food. And this is, don't fact check me on this one, but 10 times more food in the world to feed everybody over multiple times. And I think we throw away more food than anything. And there's a lot of land, there's a lot of space, there's an abundant amount of resources. And nobody should have to starve, and nobody should ever fear for their resources, because this earth is bountiful.
100%. And increasingly, as I'm seeing things happen at a global level, it's just reinforcing to me of, getting good, better, and best. So now I'm at the stage of actually not just having my rice and beans, but I'm just ordered in a whole bunch of emergency freeze-dried food, which is so much more delicious. And all you got to do is add water, and it's instantly your meals. And they got these kits. So like I just bought a $200 kit, New Zealand dollars, and that's going to cover me for a whole week of eating. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner, 2,200 calories a day. So, and it's very simple, and that'll be delicious. So once you get to the higher levels of having access to buy emergency, because at the moment, my emergency bucket's well above $1,000. So what's the point of me having excess of $1,000 in there if it's not benefiting my life? I might as well add to my potential emergency situation in a real life situation. So let's say COVID happens again, and everyone's ordering these emergency foods at the same time, and they run out of stock, and then we don't have access. So isn't it better to prepare yourself ahead of time to know if these food shortages do come? You've got options between good, better, and best. Maybe one day I can eat beans and rice. Another day I can have this delicious beef stroganoff, just add water type of idea. So I just want you to know the course offers you not just something basic, but the levels of which you can enjoy your life. And my ultimate goal is to have a smart home, so to be fully off the grid. That is solar energy. That is the ability to have water tanks. And so that I'll be producing my own power, have my own water storage, and have my own food storage, be completely off the system.
With electric cars?
Well, I've already got the electric car, but
No
that yeah. So that's a longer term plan, but I don't have to get there to actually feel self-sufficient or secure the reptilian brain. It's just degrees of security, degrees of feeling self-sufficient.
And that's the benefits of our technology and our advanced brains and thinking, because if you do the same thing over and over and expecting different results, then obviously that's the definition of insanity. And clever ideas like this is why I love us conversing together. So
100%. Well, maybe I'm just thinking, Antonio, wouldn't it be great? I know you're a big fan of the bucket system, as it's been taught, and I know that you've referred a lot of people to this work as well, and they just absolutely love the bucket system. It seems to be such a game changer, even though it's only a small aspect of the course. It seems to be, for the initial stages anyway, one of the biggest game changers. So,
yeah,
would you like me to touch a bit on that?
yeah, and I'll give a quick testimony on it too. And for all those listening, we'll for sure leave some links down here so you can get access to Guss's product on these financial courses on his website, and you can pick the one that pertains to you or the entire course. And this bucket system is an automated percentage system that allows you to just not even think about it, and it completely takes care of you from your wants, needs, and your future. And it's absolutely an incredible thing to know that it's as simple as setting up different accounts. But you explain it much better than I do, and it's totally been game changer for everybody that I've known who's taken that course.
Can you just tell me, maybe before I really delve into it, can you tell me what's been the direct benefit of your life and Violet's life and the people you know, but for you personally, how's it impacted and benefited your life?
So when all your money just sits in one account and you do not direct it, it doesn't, in our story opinion, it never found that great of a location. And never, if I never aimed, so therefore I never landed to anything, and it wasn't producing any results in our life. So instead we have an investing bucket, a giving bucket. I'm able to be more generous now. We have our general bills account. We have long-term savings. We have short-term savings that we want to super save to get certain things that we want, and a splash account for whenever we want spontaneous moments. And we also take the liberty too to have even more different types of little buckets. It's just delayed gratification. It is a very conscious, systematic way to have enough for everything.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And the reason I created the system, and I love this term that I coined for this course, but it's true in my life, even though I've never been a millionaire, but it says how to feel like a millionaire without having to be one. And what I love about what it's really saying is how to live with margins and space so you don't have to think about money as a factor. You know, I'm pretty sure everyone's common when they go to spend something and they just feel that pain. Oh, am I going to have enough in my account, or is it going to fix something else? They're always second guessing that feeling. Can you relate to that, Antonio? Before you had the system, there was always that second thought of how it was going to affect your day-to-day life.
Oh, and we would spend sometimes and spend anyways. It's kind of like just a guess question mark, and then a week or two later, a bill comes up and bites you in the butt.
Yeah, and like how many times did I experience that before I found the system and implemented it? It was like that. I had to be so conscious of money. The other reason I designed this system was I found myself, human nature, and I'm sure a lot of people do this, but I did myself. I would have a whole pool of money, and then I would not, you know, and originally I had a system like you, but what I found was that I would get sidetracked with my latest, greatest passion or area of interest. And I wouldn't think longer term. I wouldn't think medium term. I would just be thinking of what the next best thing was. And it was very childlike thinking. You just lived for the next thing that you wanted. But what would happen as a result of that is I would have ended up putting all my money into the greatest passion. And then I might crash my car, or there might be a dud. I wouldn't have enough insurance, or I would just get tunnel vision. And guess what? The thing that I thought was going to bring me all this joy and pleasure actually ended up being a dud. Or I lost my interest over. And guess what happened? I had no more power, no more money for anything else. I could easily shift my attention and get excited about something else. Go, right, I want to invest in this now or experience this, but I had no power. I couldn't access the money because I just spent it all on this dud thing, or this thing that wasn't for me. And so part of the reason was I wanted to train myself to think short, medium, and long term. But as a result of doing that and applying the system, what happened was I maybe for the first month, I had to learn to be disciplined and to spend within my means. After that, what I found is the system started to look after me. I started getting abundance in every account, and I started thinking smartly of what I really wanted. And before I knew it, I was living in the sense where I didn't have to think about money again. I had a splash account. So if I really wanted something, if I didn't have the money in the splash account, I wouldn't get it. But if I did, I had the money without thinking twice, I could get it. The emergency account created huge security. So getting just $1,000 in there was amazing. So there was times I would use it. And when I used to get stressed out, one time, I'll tell a story. I was flying from Australia to New Zealand, and I'd just eaten half a Subway sandwich at the Australian airport. And I thought, you know what? I'll have the rest later. So I popped it in my bag, completely forgot about it. Went through check-in, and then a dog came sniffing around me just when I was going through customs. And I thought, oh, there's nothing in here. You can check my bag. And to my horror, they pulled out my sandwich and said, you're not allowed chicken to cross the barrier. And the dog sniffed out. I was like, oh, crap. And they fined me $400 for that one sandwich. Right? Well, that's just the custom. It's true. They're allowed to do that. But I, in my naivety, forgot about it and then got... But anyway, my point is I could have dwelt on that and be angry that I'm losing out that money. I'm going to have to go without this week. But you know what? I realized, I looked at my emergency account, I got over $1,000 in there. So I could just splash $400 on it. Okay, I wasn't happy about it. But the fact is, it didn't impact me in the same way it would have impacted my lifestyle and my life had I not had that emergency account. Mm-hmm. And guess what? The emergency account just topped up soon after without me realizing $20 a week. So yeah, those were some of the benefits. I mean, the benefits go on and on. I've never had to pay a bill in 10 years of my life because every year I calculate every bill I have. I decide on what I need to pay into that bills account every week, and it goes in automatically with a buffer of 10%. So there's always more than enough in that bills account every single year and growing. And so I never have to pay a bill because all the automatic payments are set up. So I love that system.
Yeah, you're the second person I hear that is that proactive with their finances, that they pay something in advance. And I've heard of that too, that people pay their electricity bill a year in advance. The rest of the year's car payment in advance. And that's just the way of those margins that you talk about there too. And I want to ask you too, obviously Guss's courses are detailed and they're structured. And I know we've jumped around from different topics, but I know that a lot of the things that you've said gave the audience a lot of value. What are maybe some of the closing one or two thoughts that you want to share financially wise or life wise or anything really? I think I've had a lot of fun with this podcast session too. And if you can believe it, it's been, I don't know, maybe 45 minutes or so.
Wow, it's gone so fast. I guess we're coming to the wrap-up time. Well, maybe I'll just quickly touch on the three other areas that we look at, and then I'll give you some tidbits of just some practical things you could go and do now, even if you didn't do the course. If you want access to a whole free session, then you can get that on the line. You can get that through the website, just email, and I'll just email you a whole free session, no strings attached. But maybe I'll just give you some tidbits on this as well in closing.
Yeah, of course.
So like I said, the bucket system comes out when we really help the savvy manager, steward, the savvy steward. Then we've got the entrepreneurs. We do a whole session, not only how to manage your current wealth, but then how to create wealth. And I think this deserves a whole podcast in itself, but I love this. Once you secure your reptilian brain and you manage your manager, guess what? You now can access your entrepreneur. And we teach you how to create value with your current passions, which this is such an exciting one. And I love this whole session. And then this one's an amazing one. Not only do we teach you how to create your golden goose in this session as an entrepreneur, then we teach you how to actually live off other people's golden gooses just on passive. So you get money feeding you without even having to worry. And I've made my first big investment during COVID, and it's about to pay me out my first dividend at the end of the month. So it's just an idea. We'll learn how to become a great investor. Then finally, now, not all of you have to do this, but you'll get the opportunity to, if you want, you can become a philanthropist. And by philanthropist, I don't mean some great person that has to donate $1 million. You can learn how to be a giver right in your current situation. Because you're going to feel like you've got abundance, then you're also going to show when you give to other people, you tell yourself, hey, I've got more than enough for me. I can afford to give. And that does something. But coming back to the tidbits, as you're saying in closing, which I think will be great for people to know. Number one, just coming back to those bucket systems, it sounds like there's a lot to it, but it's really not. Once you set it up, you set them up, and guess what? it pays you for the rest of your life. So the discipline's one time and you have to be disciplined again, right? But the tidbits would be, I would say, so that you don't have to do the session, but if you just want to know, I'd set up three accounts, one giving, one active capital, and one passive capital. And these are the great principles of Jim Rohn, which I apply. And this is just at the basic level without understanding the bucket system. And I would say, give 10% and put it to giving. So you can give to other people or other causes that you want without thinking. Take 10% and reinvest it in yourself. Become better. Apply it, do a course, upgrade yourself, improve your knowledge. And you'll find that it returns massively into your life. And number 3, create an account, even if you don't know what you want to invest in yet, put 10% and just call it investment money into things you didn't work on, but it's going to pay you into the future. And so if I was to say just 3 really easy things to get set up, create those 3 accounts, and just applying those 3 principles alone will pay you back unending into the future.
That's great advice. Thank you for all that too, Guss. The one thing I want to say is I love just sharing these. I get to relearn the lessons that you taught me. We did the entire financial course, and we're starting to feel the benefits and the blessings from it, and it's truly incredible. I know that we'll come up with some more topics too. I think this was a great first session. Obviously, the more we do it, the better we get. And then as we really boost the momentum, we'll start booking guests. So for those in the comments, ask us some questions. Please leave a rating review. This helps the podcast out. 5 stars. And if you don't think we deserve 5 stars, just leave us a personal direct message, and we'll improve on things. And it's been a pleasure. It's been a lot of fun. I always learn a lot of things from you guys all the time. I just wanted to broadcast it out for a lot of other people to hear the same powerful advice. So next week, next Sunday, we'll record another one. And this is in the books, session number 1, podcast number 1. We'll have to think of what to call it, but the Ignite podcast is officially up and live.
Yes, sir. What a great start. I mean, just so much fun working with you too, Antonio. I mean, you're such a good student of what you learn, and I believe increasingly going to become a great teacher. So seeing you develop and apply, and all the people that you've actually led to this and seeing their lives change, I mean, it's just so awesome. So I'm excited to get this out to people maybe that were in our position, where we were for you last year, or for me years ago, and actually find these tools. I mean, that would be, for me, that's what it's all about, seeing people come into their own. And so that's what I'd love to see, definitely.
One more thing too is just, the world can always use another positive message. A lot of conversations in the break room, a lot of conversations at home gatherings, friendship gatherings. A lot of people don't really talk about things that really can move your life forward. I'm not saying that you always have to talk about productivity and finances getting ahead, but in fact, it's 99% just not there. We can always use another person that's willing to share a great message. So thank you for putting it out there. And I guess I'll see you next time, Guss.
All right. That wraps us up. Awesome. Over and out.
All right, man. Take care. Peace.